Hey guys, welcome back to another sit down video. Yeah, I want to try and kind of keep mixing up with these sit down videos because obviously a lot of what I do on the channel is I go out to parks and I vlog. But obviously with our friend COVID, I don't know how often we're going to be able to get into parks and stuff. So I want to kind of get used to doing like half sit down videos in kind of the style of how I write my blog posts, but like sit down talky videos. So, and obviously alongside that I'll still keep doing the vlogs where I do manage to get to parks. But today, do you like my spooky background? Hopefully it's not too distracting. I just wanted something that would set the scene because it's the start of October, which means it's the start of spooky season. Obviously, again, COVID means it's not spooky season in the normal way we're able to enjoy spooky season, and obviously with COVID it's meant that a lot of the kind of independently run attractions have announced that they're not able to run this year, which is super sad. But that said, there are still loads of amazing events and attractions operating, and I think we're going to see some really like kind of cool different takes on how to do a scare attraction with the COVID restrictions in place. So I'm really excited to see what the parks and attractions are able to do this year. But with that said, I do think that actually the fact that we're not able to get to as many of these events this year, it's made me really like grateful and like sitting here pondering all of the fun times I have managed to have in the past at these attractions. So what I wanted to do today was count down a top 10. Well, it's not like a top 10 like ranking. It's literally just like 10 UK attractions, horror attractions, Halloween attractions that I really love. Like I said, it's in no particular order, it's just literally like a list of attractions that I enjoy or events that I enjoy in the UK. I want to do one UK one and then I want to do a European one as well. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today, sitting down and talking about my top 10 list of 10 attractions, horror attractions in the UK that I really love. So without further ado, no way, I want to do the disclaimer because I know y'all will like yell at me. So this is 10, I'm keeping it to 10 because otherwise it would literally be, here's every horror attraction in the UK I've ever done and the things I like about it. So in the interest of being succinct, I've cut it down to 10. If your favourite attraction isn't on this list, it's fine, don't worry about it. Like, it's not the end of the world, we'll get through it together. It also doesn't mean that I think it's bad or I think it's crap or I don't like it. It just means it's not on the list. It's just not one I wanted to add to the list. So it's not the end of the world, it's fine, we'll get through it. So let's get stuck in. Here's the first one on the list. So kicking off is Fear at Avon Valley. This is an attraction that I wanted to visit for so long. Like, it was top of my list, like everyone raved about this attraction and I was like, I will get there. And then finally in 2017 I finally managed to visit. So me and my friend had made plans. We're like, right, I worked at Thorpe at the time. I was like, well, you come to Thorpe and then we'll get in the car and we'll go and we'll drive down the road, and it will take like 2 hours to get there, meaning we'll have like 3 hours in the park and that'll be fine. So we did that and we started driving, and after about half an hour of driving we noticed that the timer, like the amount left of our trip, hadn't gone down, and it turned out to be like the most horrendous traffic the entire way there. So we ended up arriving at the park at 9 PM and the park closed at 10. So we literally ran around the park and did every single attraction, like one after the other. We stopped and watched the fire pyrotechnics show, and we were exhausted and we had to go home, and it was kind of like, oh God, like, and I mean, sadly it was on my list to revisit again this year, but obviously the way things have gone, that's not able to happen. But that said, I still had an amazing time at Fear. Like, it was really good. It was a very, very good Scream park. Loads of kind of pop-up tents all round. And what I really love about Fear is their themes and the ideas behind their attractions are really clever and really kind of innovative. They do things that you might not have thought of before, or things that kind of set them apart from the other kind of scare events and attractions. So when we went, I think it was 2017 I went, they had one attraction called, it was called Anarchy Live, and it was themed around like a game show, almost like a Hunger Games, like Battle Rouse type, maybe like a little bit of Dead Set in there as well, themed game show, where the idea was that this audience was watching you and you basically had to get out alive, and I believe it's like zombies. My memory is really poor. I remember it being really good, and you were like on the set, the whole thing was themed to the set of a TV show, game show, and that was something I'd never seen done before, just like really clever and thinking outside the box. Also that year they had the Fourth, which had obviously this amazing social media campaign behind it, teasing what's the fourth going to be. It was the fourth maze they were building at Fear, and they teased all different themes. So like, was it, I can't even remember what the themes were. Was it going to be like apocalyptic or like creepy clowns or zombies, whatever? It was a few years ago now, so I'm kind of guessing you don't really care about spoilers at this point, but if you do, please skip ahead. But it turned out to be aliens, and it was really clever. It's something I've never seen done before, like the way the alien was portrayed throughout the attraction. There was an amazing scene with an elevator and you were in there, the alien kind of came in from above you, and it was just terrifying, like absolutely amazing stuff, and not something I've seen done since at a scare event. And then obviously you have like the big pyrotechnics show. That's kind of Fear, it was Fear's like stamp of uniqueness. I don't know, I'm bad with words today, but obviously a lot of other attractions have kind of taken their lead on that and introduced their own pyrotechnic shows since, because people loved it. Like, it was amazing. It really was this amazing centerpiece to the whole attraction, and it's probably top of my list for UK events that I want to get back to and experience again. So next on my list of my favourite UK Halloween events is none other than Scarefest at Alton Towers Resort. I say this every year, Alton Towers for me is best enjoyed in the autumn. You obviously have the naturally spooky setting of the towers and the grounds, amazing in themselves, but then obviously once you have autumn rolling in, those trees start to change colour and there's a little bit of a chill in the air. It really is magical. It's just something in the air and the atmosphere at Towers that really sets it off, and it kind of makes it this perfect setting to have a Halloween kind of spooky event. And then obviously they use that to their advantage. You have the attractions that are inside the towers themselves, things like the Autumnville Mine Tours. Obviously that really takes advantage of the kind of creepy narrow corridors and things within the towers. I love that attraction itself. Again, it's something like really unique theme and actually quite kind of macabre. It gives me like, if you've ever seen the film Jeepers Creepers, it always really reminds me of Jeepers Creepers. In there's kind of like, it's very whimsical. Like, it is dark and it is grotesque and horrifying, but there's something whimsical about it, and it almost has a kind of, when you're inside it, it's like a dark cottagey feel. I love that room when you're in there and you go in, it has like the sewing machine and like the skin hanging up. Gross, disgusting, but I think like, oh my god, I love it so much. And then obviously you have the whole world and kind of narrative and stories that they've built out of the Terror of the Towers franchise that they built. So obviously I think that's the longest running attraction that they have in terms of like an overarching storyline, but every year they develop it a little bit and add a little bit to it. Obviously last year they introduced the attic, which was amazing, very kind of quintessential Alton Towers stuff, that kind of gothic Victorian lore to the storytelling. It's kind of like real classic ghost story stuff, but they do it so well, and obviously using the natural settings of the towers themselves to kind of elevate all of their storytelling across that. But then obviously they do other stuff as well that's, again, very quirky Alton Towers-y stuff. Things like the Sanctuary to launch the Smiler, obviously that was amazing, really dark and twisted and kind of a little bit tongue-in-cheek as well. Darkest Depths last year, I'm so glad that's coming back this year. It's one of my favourite themed mazes towers I've ever done. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, and spooky mermaids, anything kind of piratey, under the sea kind of vibes I love. Like, I loved The Curse at Thorpe Park, and Darkest Depths I think feeds into that same part of my brain that loves that. So I'm really glad that's coming back this year. And then obviously you have really dark stuff, attractions like Subspecies. I love the way that Towers kind of take their existing IPs within the park and use them to create their kind of horror maze narratives. Obviously Subspecies related in some way to Subterra, I believe, and kind of Forbidden Valley in general. Again, I mean, kind of similar to Fear at Avon Valley actually with Anarchy Live. You are in the maze and you are kind of like you're on this dark side of the internet, like the dark web, and people are bidding on you to win, and it's extra terrifying because you obviously get split up from your group, and it's one of the first mazes I ever experienced that did that. Yeah, it's just terrifying, isn't it? Like, I know that a lot of people I speak to say that Subspecies is probably one of the scariest mazes in the UK, and I think it still lives up to that. It's kind of sad that we're not getting that again this year, but actually I would rather that Towers stop doing the attractions and kind of let them have their heyday before they kind of fizzle out into nothing. So I'm quite glad in a way that it's had its day and we can kind of look back with fond memories of Subspecies. But yeah, Alton Towers Scarefest as well. Like, it's got this kind of like ghostly vibe to it. So like you walk around the Towers garden and you go, yeah, I would expect to see a ghost here. So when you see like the Alton ancestors hanging out, it kind of like, yeah, this makes sense that they're here. This next one was new for me last year, and it's one of those attractions that in 2018, I believe, a few people went that I kind of follow on Twitter and kind of just in the general like UK theme park community circuits, and that is Haunting of Hinchingbrooke House. Everybody raved about this, said it was absolutely terrifying, one of the scariest attractions they'd ever done in the UK, so I was like, right, we're gonna do it. So I finally got around to doing it last year. Again, it's quite similar to Alton Towers in that it's a creepy like manor house and property, and the attraction is within the house and grounds. It's really crazy how they've managed to do it. I don't know if it's like in its off season, like outside of Halloween, if it's just like a National Trust building or something. I don't know, I'll have to look into that. Probably should have researched that before filming this, but I didn't. It's not like a theme park event or a screen park event where you have all these separate mazes. You literally start in your group and you're in your group for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and you go through a really long trail, and it's a lot of smaller scenes as opposed to whole mazes that you go through, even though some of the scenes are kind of intense and stuff, so they are a bit more like a standalone scare maze, but it's all joined, so you literally do one after the other on a set path, which obviously, I mean, that kind of thing would work well for COVID and social distancing, but obviously again this year they are sadly one of the attractions that wasn't able to find a way to operate, which is a shame, but obviously we're just really hoping that they come back bigger and better next year, so fingers crossed for that. But yeah, I mean, absolutely terrifying. Something I always find visiting new events and events where I don't really like, obviously like I said, I heard a lot of people say that this was really scary and really intense, but nobody really went into detail about what it was. So going into it, I was absolutely petrified because I literally had no idea what was coming around the corner. And what was really great about the setting and the manor house is each scene was contained in one room. So I was at the head of the group, and every room I had to open the door and lead into it, and obviously I had no idea what was going to be behind each door, so it was just terrifying, like absolutely amazing. Each room was themed really well. They had some kind of classic Frankenstein style stuff set within the backdrop of the real library. That was great. They had a purge scene with the kind of car covered in lights with the music and the masks. They had, what else did they have? Like a Child's Play Chucky toy factory scene, a cult kind of Wicker Man-esque theme with like kind of the like wooden like twig masks and things. Basically every kind of flavour of horror you can think of, there was a snippet of it in Haunting of Hinchingbrooke House, which I absolutely love that. There was something for fans of all different types of horror, and something amazing they had as well. There was a school in the grounds of Hinchingbrooke House, and they used the actual school to do some of the scenes. So you literally, like, at one point we had to walk into the school building and walk down the school corridors, which obviously that is creepy as hell anyway in the setting, and then to have that kind of ramped up with all the music and the special effects and the actors and stuff, absolutely brilliant. I'm really obviously gutted I can't go back there this year. I'm really hoping it comes back in 2021 so I can get back there, because I absolutely loved it in 2019. Next up on the list is one that's very dear to my heart, that is Halloween at Chessington World of Adventures. I grew up going to Chessington quite a lot as a kid. I don't think we ever went around Halloween, but there's something, every time I go to Chessington I get this overwhelming wave of nostalgia and joy, and then couple that with my love of Halloween and autumn. There is no happier place to me than Chessington World of Adventures around Halloween time. I absolutely love going into the park, and there are kind of pumpkins strewn everywhere, and they have kind of the skeletons and their purple lighting, their kind of cobweb theming everywhere. It's just so magical. Like, I can't describe how, like, it's just, I love it. It makes me so happy even thinking about it. I'm like, oh, I love Chessington so much. Obviously one of the big pluses of Chessington World of Adventures at Halloween is the night riding. I love riding Dragon's Fury at night. Obviously that's a very twisty, topsy-turvy layout, and especially at night you have no idea where you are, and it's great. And then obviously Vampire has a spooky theme anyway, and that's just elevated when you're in the dark. I absolutely love like flying through the trees in the pitch black and then swooping down into that final tunnel and flying up the wall while you have that almost like strobe light effect of the on-ride photo going. Like, to me, that is like peak Halloween. I absolutely love doing that. It just makes me so happy. And then obviously on top of that, you have all of the great Halloween stuff that they do. Obviously it's not as hardcore as some of the stuff at Towers or Thorpe Park. It's much more toned down to fit Chessington's kind of family audience. But there's still like an element of like spooky scariness that, like, the attractions are great. You have their kind of general, like the shows and stuff, the Halloween shows, which are all really fun. But then you have things like, I think last year it was called Spiders, and years previous I think it was called Curse of the Lost Tomb, which is kind of like a mini escape room, nightmare, crystal maze type thing where you all go through as a group together and you go through scene by scene, and it is scarily themed, and there's kind of like spooky skeletons, and like there was a giant man in armour. Obviously last year it was more spidery, Tim Burton-esque type characters, but then you have to kind of solve puzzles as a group together. Not as hardcore as like in an escape room, like you're helped along the way because it's meant to be like fun and kind of interactive. But I love that. I always think that's just such a clever way of creating a kind of almost like pseudo scare maze experience, but for an audience like younger kids who aren't really going to appreciate like having the living crap scared out of them. That said, they also have Creepy Caves Unearthed, which is for Chessington it's terrifying anyway, but generally speaking, one of the scariest horror experiences I've done in the UK. Obviously you have this amazing setting of the old creepy caves, like the actual kind of reptile house, insect house, whatever you want to call it. So you have all these old like what used to display like snakes and spiders and stuff like that. So when you're in there, there's a general like creepy vibe anyway, like, ugh, something crawling on me, and they really take advantage of that general creepiness. And then obviously they've built this amazing storyline through it. There's some really great special effects in this attraction. They've kind of got this flower that like spews fog. They've got actors that are in the like the display cases. The actors' masks and makeup is absolutely grotesque, and even thinking about it now is just disgusting. I hate it. And it's so funny because, like I say, it really is scary, and every year I've done it, you're always in the queue waiting to go in, and there's always a family with kids, and the staff members do such a good job of going up to them and being like, hey guys, just to let you know, this attraction is really scary, you might want to rethink it with a kid. And the parents are always like, kid will be fine. And then cut to like 1 minute into the attraction and the kids are like screaming, crying. It happens every single year. To be fair, they come out laughing on the other end once they've calmed down, but you know, do you know what I mean? Like, if you were thinking of going into this attraction with younger kids, just know it is really scary. For this year, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm not actually too sure what it is going to be this year. There is, I think it's called Creepy Caves The Revenge or something like that. Sorry, I'm really bad at this. Can't remember off the top of my head what it's called. But it's kind of a development of the Creepy Caves Unearthed storyline. So I'm really intrigued to see what changes there will be made given the COVID-19 kind of implications and social distancing and things. But I'm sure, I mean, it's Chessington and they haven't let me down so far with Halloween. So I'm pretty sure they're going to nail it. And obviously I can't leave this section without mentioning one of my all-time favourite attractions that has ever been at any UK park, and that is the Mystery of Hocus Pocus Hall. Before Room on the Broom, there was an attraction called Hocus Pocus Hall, which is kind of a walk-through funhouse type thing with like goblins and stuff. And one year they did this amazing overlay called Mystery of Hocus Pocus Hall with the most incredible kind of first scene to an attraction I've probably ever seen as a kind of temporary kind of overlay. Had all projection mapping and like a diamond with like magic going into it. But the thing that makes it for me the most is obviously, I mean, the amazing IMA score Mystery of Hocus Pocus Hall soundtrack. I walked down the aisle to it at my wedding, like that's how much I love it. I absolutely love that track. And I don't know if Chessington play it anymore, but for a while even after the attraction didn't come back for following years, they did still play the music. So I will be interested, I'll keep an ear out for it this year. I'm pretty sure they do play it, not as prominently, but I'm pretty sure I heard it last year, but I can't remember. I will update if I hear it this year. Next up on my list is Scare Kingdom. Now this is it is a Scream park, but it's kind of a mashup of like a traditional Scream park like a Tullys or a Fear at Avon Valley, mixed with the type of thing I was talking about, Haunting at Hinchingbrooke House, in that it's not like a free roam, you go and you can go into the different haunts when you like. It is, you follow one path around and you do each maze one after the other. The thing about Scare Kingdom is they are not for the faint-hearted. The attractions at Scare Kingdom are all really high octane, very scary, very intense, very grotesque, very gory. I love all that. It very much appeals to, like, I love horror films, I love kind of really intense, gory, like over-the-top blood and things, so that side of it really appeals to me. There's another side of Scare Kingdom that doesn't really appeal to me, but I know there is a big audience for it. It's just not my personal taste, which is the kind of the solo, intense, kind of sexualized experience. That is, of course, Psychomantium, aka the UK's most intense scare maze. And in this you go through it by yourself and you go through a series of scenes, but it's quite graphic. There's lots of nudity, there's lots of sexual innuendo, there's people kind of straddling your face and doing God knows what to you, and personally that's just not something that I enjoy, but I know a lot of people absolutely love it, and it's very good for what it is. Like, they do it really well. It's just personally I'm a bit more prudish than I thought, and I kind of was like, oh, I didn't really enjoy that. But the other attractions, I've been twice now I think, and the other attractions are amazing. And something else, like similar to Fear actually, I find with these more independent places that the creative thinking is much more innovative and out of the box, and the same goes for Scare Kingdom. I remember there's a few things that really stick out to me from my times at Scare Kingdom. One is we did a corn maze and we were going through it and it was like pitch black, and this like slender man kind of guy like came out of the hedge like this, like arms first, and his arms just kept coming, and I remember being like, the visual of that was terrifying, and I remember being like, oh my god, this was amazing. Also, there was an attraction called Human Zoo where you ended up, like, our group ended up in a cage, and there was this like Dr. Satan style guy with like this huge mechanism on his back, and again visually it was just like, wow, this is incredible. Like, I feel like I'm in like a new metal music video or something. Like, it's a very particular style of horror maze and they just do it absolutely amazingly. There was also a maze we did once, again I'm so terrible at remembering names of these, so if you do know the names please comment below. Anyone who's been will probably know what I'm talking about, but I'm just terrible at remembering the names of things. But then we did one that ended with like a woman giving birth to what I'm assuming was the Antichrist, like in a pentagram, surrounded by like cult leader type people. And it's just the thing about Scare Kingdom is they're not really scared to go that step further into kind of places of discomfort, so you see a lot of stuff there that a lot of other places wouldn't be comfortable to show, and I really appreciate that, because in terms of like horror films and visuals, I do kind of, I really appreciate the more extreme graphic stuff, just not when someone's straddling my face. Next on the list is an attraction I absolutely love, and it was one of those ones that I'd kind of heard about and was like, okay, we'll go, and I've been twice now, and that is Dr. Fright's Halloween Nights. I absolutely love this attraction. I think it's brilliant. You know, I keep talking about this creativity and innovation. Well, the guys behind Dr. Frights have it in bucket loads, and I always say when I'm there, like, I would love to see what they could do if they were given kind of like unlimited amounts of cash to play with, because what they managed to do on their smaller budgets, it's mind-blowing. It's just so clever, and every time I'm like, oh my god, that is so good, like so clever. I would never have thought of that. And yeah, it leaves me beaming, smiling every time I go, because I'm like, yeah, no, you guys nailed it. So when I went, I think again, the first time I went might have been 2016, you know, it was a few years ago, and it was themed. There are always 4 mazes set in the marquee, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you kind of have the central marquee as like a hub. And each maze, the first year we went, was themed around a different era of horror movies. So the first maze was kind of like a 50s B-movie style thing, and you went in, it was like a drive-in cinema and everything was in like grayscale. The next tent was themed to the 70s and like 70s grindhouse double bill, like these really low budget, high gore, high horror movies that you had in the 70s. and it started off with like a cannibal holocaust inspired half of the maze, and it was like cannibals in the jungle, kind of generic overarching theme. It was really gross and like gory. And the second half was more of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like cutting people up, loads of gore, hardcore heavy metal soundtrack playing, kind of, I think there were like cars and like a garage around, like it was just very much like my aesthetic. I very much appreciated it. The next maze was 80s themed, and all around like video rental and the video nasties, and you went into it and the idea was you were in like a cabin in the woods style slasher movie. But when you got halfway through the maze, there was like a sound of a videotape rewinding, and then you did the same maze, like the second half of the maze was just the same first half again, which I was like, that is so clever, like that is so clever, and it was really, really scary. And then the last one was themed around like the 2010s, like Blumhouse and streaming. So I think on the screen they had like, I think it was called like Horror Flicks, or like a Netflix like rip-off thing, like inspired thing, as you entered the maze, and then it was all kind of like Blumhouse inspired inside. And when we went, so like I say, I absolutely loved it the first time round. So we went back again last year, and again, same again, it was absolutely brilliant. Not as much of a kind of overarching theme that tied all the mazes together this time. Each maze was more of a standalone thing. But there were two that really stuck out to me. The first one was a Killer Clowns in Outer Space inspired attraction. I mean, you can imagine the chaos, like scary clowns, but not in a traditional like clown that's gonna stab you and covered in blood, like grungy type of way, but in the opposite, like over the top candy pastel colours, disco lights, lasers, spaceship, like retro kitschy spaceship aesthetic, and you had like horrifying clown heads popping out from the ceiling, and it was just crazy. I loved it. Like, you know, when you're just laughing the whole way through because it's so absurd, that's exactly what that maze was. And then lastly was one of the scariest mazes we did all year last year. I think it was called something like Director's Cut. I can't remember the name. I'm so sorry, I'm really bad. But essentially it was kind of like a Passage del Terror style, like greatest hits of horror mashup thing. But there was one scene that was inspired by like the stab scene in Scream 2, where they're in the cinema and you go in, there was just loads of like ghost face masks and you didn't know which one was real. That was vile. That maze got to me so much, like my heart was beating so fast and I was so stressed out that we got halfway through and I said to the guys in my group, I was like, someone else is going to have to lead from now on, because I'm officially done, like I can't take any more of this, and they had to lead the way out. But yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. And like I say, it's unfortunately it's another one of those attractions that isn't able to operate this year, and I really hope they're able to come back for 2021, because I urge all of you to go to Dr. Frights, because they are some of the most unique and clever horror mazes that you will do in the UK. They're brilliant. So next up was another new for me attraction from last year, and that is Scaresville, the Haunted Village. Unfortunately when we went, they had just had like, when we pulled up it was pouring with rain, and considering a lot of this attraction is like traipsing through fields outside, I was like, oh my god, we're gonna get absolutely drenched. But luckily the rain held off a little bit after that. But because it rained so bad, they'd had a massive power cut, so we did actually miss out on, when you get there they hold you in this kind of like medieval, like what do they call them, like a medieval fair, Renaissance fair, like a Renaissance fair type thing with loads of like marquees with different activities. But unfortunately when we went, because of the power cut, a lot of it wasn't operating, so I was really excited to get back for this year to actually see that operate as it should, because apparently it's amazing and we didn't get to do it, but obviously COVID is a thing, so we're not able to do that this year. But yeah, Scaresville, it's very similar again to the likes of Haunting of Hinchingbrooke House, where you kind of have this very large grounds, but you're put into a group and you go through kind of several smaller scenes throughout your night. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and again, just every horror thing you can think of is kind of represented here. And what I think they do really well at Scaresville is they really make use of the space. Like there was kind of like old caravans that they converted to be like a clown's changing room and things like that. Like, and they had like this old like barn with like loads of windy, narrow, like kind of janky angle rooms, which they'd painted black and white, so it looked like almost like a German expressionist set, like Babadook style set. Yeah, I think the thing I really appreciated about it was it just feels really rustic. Like it's not the most expensive sets, not the most expensive costumes, makeup, special effects, but what they do is they do it really well, and they pull off some amazing scares. Because it is so rustic and kind of higgledy-piggledy, you really can't see where the scares are going to be coming from, so you're kind of like, it really catches you off guard. It's brilliant. But yeah, like I say, I really love that kind of like creepy old farm aesthetic around Halloween. So even being on the Scaresville Haunted Village grounds, like I loved it, like atmosphere wise it was really good. And they have a couple of, I think in my mind there's two standout scare moments. I'm not going to tell you what they are because when I went I didn't know they were coming and I had no idea, and they absolutely terrified me and I loved it, so I won't ruin them for you, but they do have some absolutely kick-ass scare moments. Especially the finale is particularly good, like really clever, and I was like, I couldn't tell where it was going, and then when the thing happened I was like, that was, you got me. You did get me. And it ends in a bar. They've got like a horror themed bar at the end, which obviously it's so much fun to sit down after you've been through one of these things. It's so great to sit down and have a beer and kind of chat to your group about and have a bit of a debrief about what the hell's just happened to you. So I really appreciated that element of the attraction as well. So the 8th attraction on my list is again another one I've been to a couple of times over the years, and that is Xtreme Scream Park, hosted at Twin Lakes Park in Melton Mowbray. So this attraction, again, much like I find it quite similar to Scare Kingdom almost in its aesthetic, in that it is down the more extreme end of the kind of scare factor. Some of my favourite haunts in the whole of the UK in this park. Obviously being set in Melton Mowbray, who are famous for their pork pies, obviously they have to have a pork pie themed attraction, which of course they do, and it's kind of like a general like butcher, almost like Texas Chainsaw Massacre feeling attraction, but like you go through scenes where there's actual like pigsties and like a giant pig comes out and there's like a freezer, and it's just really gross and like gritty, grungy feeling, and it's like you come out of it feeling really like dirty and disgusting, which is obviously great. They also have the Village, which is a really massive long attraction. It's almost like what I was saying about like Scaresville the Haunted Village. It's like a mini one of those condensed as its own standalone attraction within Xtreme Scream Park. I think if I remember rightly, I think it takes about 20-25 minutes. Like it goes on and on and on through several buildings, several routes, like it's so long. Again, this is more of a like rustic farm style theme, which I absolutely love, like scarecrows and pumpkins and hay bales and stuff. And if you're scared of scarecrows, I won't go into too much detail and spoil it for you, but the finale of the Village is amazing. You'll absolutely love it. It's terrifying. It's not there anymore, but they used to have an attraction called Stilton Hall Hotel and Spa that was themed around a kind of spa beauty treatments gone wrong / hotel kind of aesthetic, which, I mean, I love makeup and beauty and stuff like that. I love Halloween and horror and stuff like that, so Stilton Hall was like the perfect mashup of those two things. I absolutely loved that attraction. And but that is now retired. It was quite a big attraction as well. It was over 2 stories in this massive barn. And this year they've rethemed it something called Belvoir Manors, which if you go onto the website, there's like a whole page of backstory to read before you go and enjoy the attraction this year. And yeah, I did say this year, Xtreme Scream are able to operate this year. I don't know how when all of the other attractions are closed, but I'm really excited to go and see for myself how they've managed to kind of maintain a safe way to do this. Obviously I'm super grateful because I love Xtreme Scream, and I'm really excited to try out Belvoir Manors because it sounds, I can't really get my head around it. Like, I've read the backstory a couple of times and I'm still kind of like, I don't really know what this is going to be, so I'm quite excited to see it for myself. It's also home to, again, one of my favourite scare attractions in the UK and one of the most terrifying, and that is Hell Penitentiary. This is themed to a prison, which obviously quite a generic theme when it comes to a horror maze. We've been through, I think the first ever horror maze I went through was themed around a prison, so to me it seems like quite a run-of-the-mill theme. But the way that Xtreme Scream Park do it is like they take it up to the next level, really high octane, really aggressive actors like shouting in your face, your heart's beating 100 miles an hour when you're in there the whole time. It just, like, the whole vibe of the maze is really angry, like it feels like it's shouting at you the entire time you're going around it, and it's a accompanied by this like booming heavy metal soundtrack the entire way around to kind of keep your stress levels high. Something I think this attraction does really well is actually they don't have a ton of actors in there, so you're really anticipating walking around each corner, because obviously you think you're going to see someone and then you don't, and then you go into the next room and you think you're going to see someone and then you don't, and so every room and every step you take where you don't see an actor or a character, it just makes it worse and builds the anticipation more and more and more up until the point where it's almost unbearable. And I just think they really take advantage of that, and it's brilliant. Every single year I go through it, I come out my heart racing and like my adrenaline levels through the roof. It's fantastic. And it's also home to obviously Hoodoo Voodoo. I'm not a huge fan of the bag on head type mazes. Like I say, I'm a much more visual person. I like to see things, and that's a big part of what I love about scare mazes is aesthetically what they do with the sets and things. But I do think Hoodoo Voodoo kind of balances well the hood on, hood off parts. Again, very interested to see how this operates in a COVID world. Might be interesting to see the changes there. But again, theming wise, it's very cool, very funky, very like Princess and the Frog vibes, really colourful. Obviously it's voodoo themed, so it's got a lot of kind of skulls and like an underlying kind of theme of like witchcraft and stuff like that, and magic. So that is quite fun. I do quite enjoy that. And they also have a pretty good like roaming scare team as well. And also in recent years, when I went last time, they had this giant pumpkin animatronic, so I'll be really intrigued to see if they've purchased any more of these giant animatronics, because I do think like having these set centerpieces in these kind of gathering hub areas in these Scream parks, I do think it adds to the overall atmosphere of the places rather than just keeping that contained to the mazes themselves. And obviously it makes great photo opportunities as well, which we know I appreciate. We've come this far and I haven't mentioned Tulleys Shocktoberfest yet, so I suppose I should. 9th on the list is Tulleys Shocktoberfest, Tulleys Farm, whatever you want to call it. Obviously iconic in the UK kind of Halloween Scream scene. It's the UK's biggest Scream park. It's probably the UK's best Scream park. It's absolutely massive. The thing I love about Shocktoberfest is just the atmosphere. Like I say, I love this kind of farm Halloween vibe where you go in and like the bonfire smell in the air. You can always smell a little bit of like chainsaw like fumes as well. You can hear like distant sound of screaming and like revving of engines and stuff. And it's just, yeah, it's an absolutely like electric, alive atmosphere when you go to Tulleys. It's brilliant. And I'm like, even talking about it now and knowing that we're not going to get to experience that this year, it's like, oh, like Halloween's just not going to be the same without that. I really do look forward to that every single year. One of the biggest differences with Tulleys compared to the other attractions is they have the haunted hayride, which is a kind of, I guess it's like 10-minute long hayride through the woods, through different kind of horror themed scenes, and you have actors get on and off the trailer and you never quite know who's coming around the corner next. I will say the first year I did Tulleys, which I think was 2013, and I've been every single year since, even though every year I tell myself I'll have a break this year, and then I get like hardcore FOMO and I'm like, oh no, I have to go. The first year I did the hayride was probably the scariest, and as time's gone on it's gone a little bit more like tongue-in-cheek silly as opposed to really scary, which I don't mind because they have mazes to deliver the scare, so I don't mind the hayride being a bit more balanced in that aspect. But I do think back to that really scary version and think, oh, I would like to maybe see that back a little bit. They also have quite a lot of these kind of generally like creepy, like rustic feeling mazes. Things like Coven of 13, obviously themed around witches. I mean, anything like that, we know, very, very much my vibe. And you go in and it's kind of like got these like wood burning smells, loads of fog, loads of special effects, amazing first scene in the swamp. I won't spoil it if you haven't done it, but it's like eye candy. You go in and go, oh my god, this looks incredible. And then obviously the final scene in that room just absolutely filled with fog and smoke, and it feels literally like you've died and you're just wandering through like the middle of nowhere trying to find your way out. Terrifying. I love that maze. And then also the cellar. I used to really love the Esmeralda character. I'm not really sure what happened with her. I'm sure there's obviously some drama that's gone on in the background. That's why she's not there anymore. She's slowly been phased out of the cellar, but I used to love it. It was basically like you're in this like crazy cat lady's house, and it was just generally a bit gross, but I love, like, again, the aesthetic walking around the house is great. It's really creepy and gross and stinky, and then you kind of go down into the squeeze cushions, and obviously the giant snake comes out. Iconic. I love the giant snake, and it's just, yeah, this, like, thinking about the smell of the cellar now is like, I love it. It makes me happy, like, even though it's rank and disgusting. The other parts of Tullys, obviously I said I love this like rustic feel, which a lot of their mazes do have. They also have this like more hardcore, like gasoline punk style aesthetic. Firstly with Chop Shop, I love a chainsaw maze, I love a chainsaw scare, and Chop Shop is basically just chainsaw scares, and I mean it suits me down to a T. Like, lock me in a room filled with chainsaws and strobe lights flashing and I'm pretty happy. That probably stems from me experiencing the asylum for the first time all those years ago, and it's kind of stuck with me. But I think Chop Shop does it amazingly. Again, you've got this horrible loud soundtrack, these harsh white like butcher style lights, loads of chainsaws, stark white walls covered in blood, corrugated iron kind of walls. Brilliant. Like, what more do you want? Amazing. Chop Shop's still one of my all-time favourite attractions. Like, I love taking people through Chop Shop for the first time because it is such an onslaught of terror, and it is just, it doesn't stop from the second you get in to the second you get out, and it's brilliant. And then last year obviously they introduced Wasteland's Penitentiary, which obviously you have like the prison breakout themed like maze part of the attraction, which I thought was fine. Like I say, like, I don't love a prison theme, but what was the most impressive about Wastelands was the outside, and you had this incredible pyrotechnic show with all of these fire and lights synced up with this amazing like DJ set with like this booming music, and then you had scenes within this kind of courtyard within like around which the maze was set with these live actors. So it was very Mad Max kind of, like I say, like gasoline punk themed, and it was just brilliant. And the rumours were last year that there was a whole second level to the maze that wasn't ready for opening in 2019, but they were planning on opening in 2020. Obviously we're gonna have to wait a whole another year to see if those rumours were true, which is so annoying, but I guess it just gives us something to look forward to for when the attraction reopens in 2021. But yeah, I really do mean it when I say that Halloween's just not going to be the same without Tulleys Shocktoberfest. It's such a staple for me of my Halloween lineup, so much so that I've booked to go to Tullys 3 times. Like, I just need to be on the farm in Crawley, so I'm doing pumpkin picking twice, once in the day, and they're doing a nighttime pumpkin pick as well, which amazing, and also a drive-in like haunted cinema with actors, it seems like. So I am going to be going to the site 3 times this year, just not doing Tulleys Shocktoberfest as we usually would, but I mean, it's fine. Fingers crossed for next year, right? And last but certainly not least on my list, obviously I haven't mentioned it so far, so you can probably guess what it's going to be, so say it with me. Thorpe Park Fright Nights. Obviously Fright Nights is on this list. It's my all-time favourite UK Halloween event. It's just like, it was the first one I went to. It was the first horror Halloween event I ever went to at a theme park in the UK, and it's the one that really got me into this stuff in the first place. I remember going for the first year, I think in 2006, and I'd probably just turned 16, and before we went I was always the person like organising the group trips, so I would do all of the like the research and stuff. And I remember on their social channels they released this video promoting Asylum, and it was like it was like a camera moving through like loads of hanging sheets, and you could hear the sound of a chainsaw. And I remember being absolutely petrified of this video and sending it to all my friends, being like, oh my god, look at this, it's amazing, like, oh my god, I'm so scared. And then we got there, and then we got in the queue for Asylum, and obviously if anyone who did it would remember, you queue and you had all these people running out of the attraction screaming, being chased by a chainsaw, and it freaked me out so much that we got really close to the entrance and I like bailed. I was like, no, I can't do it. So it's so funny for me to think of, like, now knowing what I'm like now with all these Halloween and horror events, it's so funny to think that I chickened out and didn't go in it. I finally went in it next year and actually found out that what I was imagining in my head was so much worse than what the attraction actually was. But yeah, I mean, and it's kind of gone from there. Some of my favourite all-time Halloween attractions have been at Fright Nights. Experiment 10, the first time I was split up from my group and had to go around a bit of an attraction by myself. terrifying and crawling on the floor through tunnels, vile. Cabin in the Woods, obviously the first time we had this kind of multi-route option rather than a one-way system around the maze. Again, the idea of getting lost on your own in a horror maze was terrifying at the time. Obviously now I'm a bit more hardcore these days, so that probably wouldn't freak me out as much, but back then I remember like being absolutely obsessed with the idea that I could get lost. And then you have the IPs as well, things like Walking Dead Living Nightmare and Saw Alive as well. Obviously when I worked at Thorpe I got to go in these mazes quite a lot. One of my favourite memories was for a PR story we did around Saw. We had the actor Tobin Bell, who is in the Saw movies. He was in the final room of the Saw Alive maze, so we got to do the maze and then end up being face to face with like Jigsaw himself, and I was like, this is just amazing, like every horror fan's absolute dream to do this, and it was brilliant. But yeah, I mean, something Thorpe haven't been great at in kind of previous years is kind of general park theming and atmosphere. It's very much been contained to the mazes themselves, and that's always been fantastic, but outside of that it's always been kind of business as usual for the rest of the park, which is why I'm really excited for this year, because obviously Fright Nights is able to run, but it's going to be very different than what we're used to, and it's going to be very scare zone led. And anyone who knows me, you've watched my videos, watched my vlogs or read my blogs before, knows I love scare zones. Like Wallaby Fright Nights and Halloween Horrorfest in Movie Park Germany, two of my all-time favourite Halloween events, both because their scare zones are so good and bring such an amazing atmosphere to the park. So I'm so excited to see how this kind of plays out at Thorpe, and oh my god, like I think the crows sounds terrifying. Like I say, I love a kind of creepy farmyard aesthetic, so scarecrows and the crows really feeds into my love of that. Creek Freaks Unchained, obviously really sad we don't get Creek Freaks Massacre this year because I absolutely loved that attraction last year, but really good that we're still getting chainsaws. Obviously Fright Nights wouldn't be Fright Nights without chainsaws, so I'm so pleased that we're still getting some chainsaw action. What else have we got? Fright Nights Festival, the Festival Centre, that's gonna kind of be like a macabre, like twisted circus type, like contortionists and things. It seems almost like a Cirque du Soleil type vibe, which I'm really excited for. Obviously Terror Amity High's back. You've got Lycanthorpe High this year with the werewolf school. Yeah, like there's so much going on, and I think even though we don't have as many mazes this year to look forward to, I actually think we're in for one of the best Fright Nights atmospherically that we've ever had, and I would be quite intrigued to see if that kind of the scare zone led piece would carry on into 2021 when hopefully more of the scare mazes can reopen again. But yeah, so excited for that. So yes, that was my top 10, but not in any particular order, list of my favourite Halloween events in the UK. That was so fun to talk about, but also so sad because I'm like, oh, I don't get to go to half of these this year, which is obviously really lame, but hopefully, you know what I say, like, bigger and better in 2021, fingers crossed. And we're still going to get loads of amazing scare stuff this year anyway. It's just going to be a little bit different than what we're used to, which is fine. And like I said at the start, if I didn't mention your favourite Halloween event on this list, it's fine. Let me know in the comments what your favourite Halloween event is and we can have a chat about it. It doesn't mean I don't like it, doesn't mean I think it's crap, just means it wasn't on the list. It's literally not that deep. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. Hope you're as excited for Halloween as I quite clearly am. Yeah, let me know in the comments what attractions you're doing this year, if you're doing any, what ones you're most excited for, what's your most anticipated. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up for me, leave a comment. And yeah, follow me, subscribe. Like I say, we have fun on this channel going to theme parks most of the time, but it will be kind of half going to theme parks and vlogging and half sit down videos most likely, especially as we go into the close season, because obviously this year we weren't able to get to as many parks as we usually would. If you like theme park vloggy type stuff and sit down theme park chatty videos, then please do subscribe. It's what I do here. And I will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.